Thank you for inviting me to speak here. My name is MV Ramana, and I teach at the School of Public Policy and Global Affairs at the University of British Columbia, where I direct the Liu Institute for Global Issues. I have studied nuclear energy related policy issues for a long period of time. And because my PhD is in physics, I have focused primarily on some of the technical aspects of nuclear reactor designs. And among a handful of topics, small modular nuclear reactors is a subject I have studied closely in several different countries for over a decade at this point. I have specifically looked at the small modular nuclear reactor design from NuScale Power and have written a report on the subject that I'm happy to share with you. I'm sorry I cannot be speaking to you directly in person because of conflicting schedules. I would like to just make 4 points here for your consideration in your deliberations. The first reflects the topic of cost. The small modular reactor idea is not really new. Small reactors date back to the first flush of nuclear reactor design and construction. In the 1950s, the US Atomic Energy Commission funded the construction of several small power reactors that were declared to be suitable both for use in rural areas and for foreign export. But all these reactors ended up shutting down early because they were not economically competitive. When one of these reactors, the Elk River reactor in Minnesota, was shut down in 1968, following the appearance of cracks in the cooling system piping, the Rural Cooperative Power Association that owned it decided that it was not worth repairing because, as a spokesperson of the association told the Chicago Tribune, the reactor has not been economical because it is too small. The economics of proposed small modular reactors today, including the NuScale design, are going to be just as adverse. Electricity from these proposed small modular reactors will not be competitive for exactly the same reason as the earlier small reactors. Their power output is not adequate to make them profitable. And this has become even more of a problem with these new reactors because alternatives, in particular wind and solar, have become much cheaper in the last decade. Making it all but impossible for nuclear power to compete economically, even under the best possible circumstances, and small modular reactors will only make the comparison worse. Further, the estimated costs of the NuScale reactor design have been consistently going up. One can look at the Utah Association of Municipal Power Suppliers project involving the NuScale design for evidence. In a February 2018 presentation, UAM stated that the estimated development cost was $587 million. This is the development cost, and the cost of acquisition and construction of the initial facilities was $4.2 billion. By July 2020, that figure had gone up to $6.1 billion. So from 4.2 billion to 6.1 billion, and the cost of the development costs themselves had nearly more than doubled. This means that the cost of electricity from NuScale will be much higher than renewables, which, as I mentioned earlier, are moving in the opposite direction. A second small point I want to mention is that NuScale has been consistently delayed. The schedule for NuScale initially was that it was supposed to deliver its first working small modular reactor in 2015. During the early years when the company was set up, that was the date it was targeting. Now, after a series of delays, it is now forecasting the first reactor for the UAM's project might be operational 2029, 2030. However, there are likely to be further slowdowns because of problems with the reactor design that I will mention. A particular problem, another reason why the schedule might be delayed is that the reactor's design has been consistently changing. And this means that every time the US Nuclear Regulatory Commission evaluates the design, it is looking at a different one. And each different design is going to come up with new considerations, safety considerations that would have to be addressed. And this changing nature of the reactor's design is a recipe, I would submit, for further increases in costs. And I want to turn to two other problems which I think have been key for how communities and states have looked at nuclear power. The first is that of nuclear waste. The problems of nuclear waste, its long life, and the challenge of storing it for hundreds of thousands of years are well known. This will be a problem for NuScale too, because just like large reactors, the proposed NuScale reactor design will produce radioactive waste of many kinds. The problem could be even a bit more acute. Proposed reactor designs like NuScale will produce more, not less, nuclear waste per unit of electricity they generate. This is because more neutrons escape out of the core of a smaller nuclear reactor and because of differences in the fuel management practices that are proposed. In the specific case of NuScale, it has been estimated that in addition to the roughly 60% increase in spent fuel generated, the volume of long-lived low and intermediate level waste generated by the small modular reactor could be more than an order of magnitude greater than for each unit of electricity when compared to a standard large light water reactor. Typically nuclear reactor vendors claim that managing this waste will not be difficult. However, the fact is that there is no demonstrated solution to dealing with spent fuel. Although many countries have made plans of various kinds for their stockpiles of spent fuel, almost none of those plans have materialized. There is still no operating repository for spent fuel and high-level nuclear waste from commercial nuclear power plants anywhere in the world. And this is because there are both technical and social challenges confronting proposed solutions. The United States has been trying to set up a geological repository at Yucca Mountain in Nevada for decades without any success. And there is no hope in the foreseeable future that one will be operational. Any community that hosts a small modular reactor is probably also signing up to host nuclear waste for decades, perhaps even centuries. The final point I want to make is about safety. All reactors are capable of severe accidents. While smaller reactors like NuScale are better in some ways because of the smaller inventory of radioactive materials inside the core and smaller amount of energy available for release during an accident, the problem is that NuScale and other small modular reactors typically are not planning to build just one small reactor. In the case of NuScale, it is planning to build a group of 12 at the same site. As a result, an accident at one unit might either induce accidents at others or make it harder to take preventive actions at others. Further, if the underlying reason for the accident is a common one that affects all of the Earth reactors, such as an earthquake, it is possible that many or even all units could undergo accidents. In that case, the combined radioactive inventories are sizable, even in comparison with a large reactor. Some of these issues were observed at Japan's Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. The same underlying set of causes, the earthquake and tsunami, set off meltdowns at multiple units in 2011. These events and efforts to protect different units interacted with each other in complex ways, affecting the progression of the events as a whole. Radiation leaks from one unit made it difficult for emergency workers to approach other units. Explosions at one reactor damaged the spent fuel confinement building in a co-located reactor. There exist other safety concerns as well. Concepts such as the proposed NuScale SMR design often involve shared safety systems and personnel. While this is often done to lower costs, it introduces new risks. The Fukushima reactor accident involved reactors that are relatively low in output. Daiichi 1 was only 440 megawatts in net power output. The radioactive contamination from those meltdowns extended far, and over 150,000 people had to be evacuated. This was no local emergency, and local emergency planning may not be sufficient for dealing with potential reactor accidents. There are specific safety concerns in the case of the NuScale reactor design. In March 2020, the NRC's Advisory Committee on Reactor Safeguards issued a letter warning the design and performance of the steam generators have not been yet sufficiently validated. The steam generator is what converts the heat produced by the nuclear reactions into steam that drives a turbine that ultimately generates electricity. The problem that the advisory committee was referring to had to do with the design of the structure being unique. The advisory committee pointed out, introduces different failure modes, resulting in their design and performance not being sufficiently validated. There are two concerns with the steam generator, one having to do with the instability and other having to do with corrosion. This is not going to be an easy problem to resolve. In June 2020, another advisory committee letter to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission highlighted concern about what's called boron dilution, which is used to control the reactivity of the reactor. If the boron concentration is reduced, it could increase the reactivity, thereby lowering safety. And the ACRS letter expressed concern about a potential reactivity insertion accident and core damage. This was grave enough a concern that the ACRS stated that it cannot reach a final conclusion about the safety of the NuScale design until the issue of potential reactivity insertion accident due to boron dilution in the downcomer is resolved. These problems mean that NuScale's design cannot be treated as adequately safe as of now. And the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is yet to pass the design for construction. And this is going to likely lead to even more lengthy schedule delays. To summarize, I would just point out that there are still several concerns about reactor designs like NuScale, and any decision about what to do about nuclear power in the future must be taken in light of these concerns. Thank you very much.